we could use in the future.
Yeah.
So, start at Aislinn had suggested that I do my normal invocation that I do for divinations. So I know that some of you have heard them, but this my invocation was um, written for Elder Malidoma when I was studying cowrie shell divination with him. So if everybody if you have your offerings, put them out and sit in a comfortable space. And I would invite you all too to call in your benevolent and healthy ancestors and anybody else who is walking with you. Um, and so if we could all just close our eyes and take a deep breath and let out a sigh, releasing any worry or stress from the day and inviting in the light and the unconditional love from our benevolent ancestors, and allow their energy to shower you with anything that you need and desire in this moment. Ancestors, ancestors, ancestors. I'm calling on all of my ancestors on my mother's side all the way back to the beginning of time. I'm calling on all of my ancestors on my father's side all the way back to the beginning of time. I'm calling on the wisdom of the Kontomblé, the Wedeme, the genies. I'm calling on my nature spirits, my sisters, the trees, to help root us deeply into this earth, making us beacons of light and antennas to universal wisdom. I'm calling on all of the water spirits, from those that skim the surface down to those who dive deep into the sands. I'm calling on all of the mineral people, the rock people, the stone people, the crystalline beings, from the highest of peaks to the lowest of caves. I'm calling on all of the animal energies who walk, crawl, slither, fly, and swim through this and all dimensions. And I'm calling on all of the star nations and star beings whose heart beats in sync with Mother Earth and who are in alignment with our greatest good. And I'm calling on all of our benevolent ancestors, beings of light, guides, guardians, angels, and spirit animals, so that they may embalm us in the absolute love that we are and will always be with them. Ashe.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
So I'd love
beautiful.
to start like a little bit about how we met. Aislinn and I came together in the Kontomblé merger with Elder Malidoma, and it was a pretty magical and crazy experience.
Yeah.
And our medicine continued to intertwine ever since. But if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Wow, sure. Yeah. I've shared a little bit before about my journey and like how I was called to that Kontomblé merger, but I think I will talk a little bit about it again. And it was a really interesting time in my life. I had just finished working at this. I was moving from New Orleans to Oregon. And my last job while I lived in New Orleans was at this little psychic shop in the middle of the French Quarter that had been open since the 1920s, called the Bottom of the Cup Tea Room. And it was a place where people would go to get tea leaf readings or palm readings and card readings. And I had a lot of gigs. Like, I was in the gig life in New Orleans. It's a very gig economy. And I was a self-taught reader through my gigs. And this last job in New Orleans at the Bottom of the Cup Tea Room was what I often refer to as my spiritual boot camp, where finally, like, I was going from, my healing practice being kind of a part-time thing to full-time, 40 hours a week, 10 clients a day, 10 readings a day, like dun, 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 and so many lessons, right? So many lessons about energetic hygiene, upkeep, keeping my my ancestors, my guides well fed, keeping those channels of connection clear. And then also you're working in a shop with all these other diviners and readers, so they've got their whole team, and all sorts of like fun, magical mayhem would happen. And there was this woman, Rhonda, who worked next to me in the booth next to me, and she was like kind of like I want to say like a mentor in a way, and someone I looked up to. And she would, one day she came into my booth and she was like, some spirit just walked in here and they say, you need to be writing right now. And I had known what they were talking about. They wanted me to write about my experience with spirit awareness and entity awareness. And I'm pretty sure that it was the little people that were knocking on her door. So we would all like see each other's guides. And it was in that time when I was at the bottom of the cup that the Kontomblé really started coming forward. And they had always been a part of my life and my path. And I had officially met them like 3 years prior to that. But it was then when I really noticed it was the Kontomblé who were showing up, and specifically when I was doing tea leaf readings, I'd really feel them, because to me the tea leaf reading was almost like the most open to interpretation type space. So their messages could come through with clarity, versus with the tarot, they might still be there, but I was using the, you know, the archetypal nature of the cards to draw me forward. So it was the tea leaf reading that really unlocked something. And you know, it's round, and I always felt like when you do your cowrie shell divinations for me and I look at them, I feel like I'm looking inside a teacup sometimes.
The same things, honestly, because it's such a creative dive into the other world, and it just shows you so many visions and images that, you know, one looking at it like, and I think of Malidoma here would be like, I don't understand how you see that there. But, you know, when you learn how to dance with those kind of modalities, it just is so much, it can be so expansive and exciting as to the kind of things that come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, of course there's different, like tea leaf reading is more like scrying, and the cowrie shells, you develop an intimate relationship with all the objects you're using, which maybe we can get more into that a little bit later. But in the same manner, like this intimate language was being built between the Kontomblé and I, based on the symbols that were showing up in the tea leaves, and they were using repeated symbols. So that's where that connection was really starting to come in, and my merge with them was really beginning then. And they pulled me very strongly to go to a training with Elder Malidoma. And I wasn't sure which one it was going to be, and I was feeling called to all of them. And also I knew I needed to move and leave New Orleans, and the coast was calling. And so my love and I ended up taking this big leap, and we like got rid of most of our belongings, packed everything in the car, and we did this big cross-country trip, going up the East Coast and then all the way across to Oregon. And our first stop on this trip was the Kontomblé immersion with Elder Malidoma.
And the thing there is that I had never been to New Orleans, and for the first time, I went for a wedding. This was when I was still married and had, you know, I was not really, divinations weren't really looked upon as a thing to move towards, but I had just lost 3 relatives that year, and it's the magic of Orleans, and I went into the bottom of the cup. And so when you told me that, I was like, okay, well, that's the place that my life changed, because literally I went in and had this phenomenal reading that was like, to me, it was that point was the pulling back of the setting of the arrow. And 2 months later, I had my first cowrie shell reading with Elder Malidoma, and that was when it was like, oh, this is your path. Now it's set, and everything very much to talk about. The tarot was the Tower card, and the rebuilding from there. But that my spiritual journey with the Kontomblé as well. And they tend to typically do things when, you know, sort of hitting you upside the head with a frying pan rather than just a gentle tickle.
Yeah, or I'd always see them whacking me in the head with their staff.
Yes.
lovingly so.
Totally.
But, yeah, and so when we met, right, it wasn't like we discovered this on the first day. Like this was deep into the merger. We discovered these synchronicities about our path, and one of them was that we had both been deeply touched by this psychic shop in the French Quarter, the bottom of the cup, and it was an influential like vortex, you know, like drawing of the bow for both of us,
Yes.
to tell us on our path. And we were meeting. And there was another big synchronicity that was pretty wild. Do you want to share that one, Amy?
Yes, that, you know, she had said, well, I was an actor in Chicago. And I'm like, well, I live in Chicago and I'm from Chicago. Oh, well, I was with Steward Talent. I was with Steward Talent. Who's your agent? Todd's my agent, you know? And so we had the same Chicago acting agent as well. And this was just after you had left him. So, right? But to move to New Orleans. So there might have been a slight crossover for us. I don't know. We determined that, did we?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I mean, I was still in touch with him here and there, but it had been a couple of years. Like it had been, I want to say, maybe 5 years since I had been in Chicago as a working actress. And, you know, I had really left that path behind. And I think the way I found out was that you were, like, you got a text from him or something. And I was like, you're like, oh, it's my agent. I'm like, who's your agent? And you were like, Todd. And I was like, that was my agent. And so it was just this cosmic moment where we're like, who's writing this, right? We're in the middle of, like, you could be anyone. I could be anyone. And out of this group of like 20 that came to the Kontomblé immersion of people from all over the world, we had these things.
Germany from, it was literally across the world.
So
I do feel like the Kontomblé were the ones that were like, well, yeah, we did that.
And I think that honestly, it means more now with the time that has passed. Like then it felt like cosmic wild synchronicity, which when those things happen, they're really beautiful. They feed us, they let us know we're on our path. But when they happen with a relationship that actually like endures the test of time and then proves to be a really strong friendship and sisterhood, then you're just really, it's mind-blowing, you know? And I'm just so grateful to Spirit for bringing us together, because for me, on my path and my work with the Kontomblé, you have always been there to, like, as this, like the sister supporting me and guiding my way. And your beautiful readings, the readings of the Cowrie, have always helped me. And I feel like we've had this relationship with each other where, as diviners, when we can't always just count on our own, you know, we can't always count on our own. We have blind spots. We need other diviners, need other diviners to help them see what their blind spots or where their ego is getting in the way. And so you've always been, and I think there's been some, you know, vice versa. So
absolutely. I mean, told me that Kontomblé told me to wear the other day. So
what was that?
Yes. I'm wearing the robe that you told me that the Kontomblé wanted me to wear the other day. So I'm listening, and so you too. It's been just, and I have to say too, an absolute honor to witness your growth as a diviner and to be in. So to give some backstory, when we do the Kontomblé immersion, there is a sort of a set portal that they have there, and you go in with a group of 2 to 3 people, and I was with Aislinn, and we just had some incredible, and with Caroline, who made this back here, connections to just such incredible spirit and messaging. And it was just, I'm so honored to have been able to be there to witness and to receive and continue to.
Oh, thank you. The feeling is mutual.
I really felt the call today for us to do this, because I just am so excited about what you're offering with your Ancestral Healing course. I just feel that it's so incredibly important right now, especially with all of the energies that are going on in the world. It's so easy to be knocked off your path. And I told you the other day, I loved your live and talking about the idea of ancestralization. And I was listening to some of the old conversations with Elder Malidoma and from my ancestralization with him, and him talking about what the actual act is that of what I told you, that the word interpreted ancestralization, it's kurmayu, in Dagara is interpreted to the making of family. So that active ancestralization is beyond just the healing of the wounds and the wounds that are staying within us, but expanding your support system to above and beyond what you can see. And I loved what you spoke of the other day, that it's not just our present ancestors that we know of, the trials and tribulations that have gone to, but those since the beginning of time who have such great clarity and are so succinct in their wisdom in order to guide us, the great grandmothers and grandmothers of all of us, of the collective, that we have the opportunity to connect to and to guide us.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that Elder Malidoma taught, that the ancestors, they're not just the great grandparents going back hundreds, thousands of years. They're also the ones who preceded this dimension. So they're the world builders. They're the interdimensional travelers and the star seeds, the star beings who brought their seeds here and helped build this world through merging their consciousness with the elements, right? And so that's how, through the Kontomblé's eyes, I've come to see many of the ancestors of these ones that go way far back, the ones who helped build the world builders in the ancient times. They merged their consciousness with the elements, and their consciousness came up out of the elements. And so that elements are such a key part of ancestral healing. And that's something that we'll be really exploring and diving into in my upcoming offering. I Call You Home, the Ancestor Course. Like, one of our calls is dedicated to the elements are our ancestors. And because of that, the elements are such an important vehicle for ancestralization. And there's one more point I'll make about this, kind of in response to what you just said, which is like, ancestralization can seem like a intimidating endeavor, you know, because when we think of the relatives who maybe haven't fully transitioned or transcended, it feels really heavy, right? They're that are living inside this unprocessed intergenerational trauma, and it is also that very same energy that's living inside a lot of the institutions in the world that are no longer working for us, that are no longer sustainable. Breakdown. And what the Kontomblé have been bringing through a lot recently and help opening my eyes to see is that ancestralization, it doesn't have to be heavy and hard. It can be. There can be times where, when you surrender to the ritual that the ritual that you find yourself a part of or dancing with, when you surrender to that and the grief flows through, right? Or the pain comes up. But what's going to ultimately be harder is not facing it. What's ultimately be harder is not moving through.
That are repressing it, you know. What is the great creator of disease? That's what trauma is, the emotion, the energy in motion that is trapped. And so again, and we always talk about this together, and I talk about it with my clients, but that transitioning, that transformation, that initiation, I always liken to pregnancy. And, you know, at the end of it ain't easy, you know, like, and you say, like, I'm done, I'm not having this kid, I'm out, you know, it's not worth it, it's too much pain. But what lies beyond the threshold of that is the miracle that comes with it. And the other miracle that one that is not really talked about a lot is that, you know, in scientific terms, through the birthing process, the brain is actually rewired. And wires are connected in ways that they never could be unless you went through the birthing process. And so that's how I feel ancestralization is too in the energetic realm. You don't have to be a woman and give birth and move through that to still rewire, reconnect, and retap those brain neurons into the memories to which you were formerly blacked out from or disconnected from.
Yeah, I love how you're bringing birth in, because this has been also a big theme that's been emerging in my work with the Kontomblé, and one of the big undercurrents of I Call You Home of this Ancestor Course is the healing of the ancient matriarchal lineages. And one of the core wounds that really seeks to be addressed by as many people as possible who wish to address it, like in whatever is unique to them, right? And that's the thing about the Kontomblé, is that they're wanting to bring through rituals that are specific to you, to you, Amy, or to you, like any of you on the call. They're wanting to bring through rituals specific to you, to your soul's ancestry, to your genetic ancestry, and to the elements in the land that you live. They're wanting to bring these through to open up a space and a possibility that no one else can. And that's the gift of ancestralization, is that it can really be unique, it can be creative, it can be beautiful, and it can be something that we surrender to and discover in the moment by setting the container of a ritual. So, and I think, to go back to that original wound that they've been showing, it's that being cut off from the spiritual umbilical cord. Something that the Kontomblé said to me a few months ago that really kind of cut deep was, they were saying, when you come into this world, they cut your cord and they give you a card, numbers on it. And they're talking about, the social security. They cut the cord to the mother and they give a card with numbers. And it's just like, whew. And so a big part of their call for us to reunite with the mother and bring through all these different ways of creating rituals to reconnect ourselves and reconnect our spiritual umbilical cord to the womb of the Divine Mother.
Yes, absolutely. And with that original messaging, and that's what I feel like has been coming. I've been talking about a lot recently. I wrote a post about it recently, and also the quote from Elder Malidoma, actually from his elder, that we put on Instagram, was this idea that in Indigenous culture, in Dagara culture, the elders begin to speak to the baby in the womb to see what they're here to do, and the village surrounds that baby after that communication and supports them walking forward in their authenticity with integrity, and that it is that one is always made to feel essential because you come in with a unique purpose that was divined by your spirit. And what we do in the world and modernity is we come in and the parents say, and I was guilty of this too, like, I know what's best for you, I know who you're supposed to be, or even just through trauma molding, like, this is who I want you to be, to look good, to make me look good. And so that disconnection from self is absolutely, it's a product rather than a spirit, a person, a human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that's another one of the benefits of ancestral healing, right? Is that it's not just about paying homage to the ancestors or making yourself small so that they can stand up. No, it's about you coming home to yourself. And the way that, or we coming home to ourselves, and the way that we do that is by remembering our connection to the healthy ones, to the well ones, ancient ones from long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you said there, that reminds me of something else that Elder Malidoma talked about, where when you go to your shrine and you talk to your ancestors, these aren't deities to you. These aren't people that, like you just said, you need to bow down to. Like, this is your tribe. And, I was just thinking about it when I was sitting down there, like he would come down to speak and be like, I was just with my ancestors. Like, you need to tell them straight what you need. Because I'll go to them and be like, listen, you came here and made me do this. You better go up and come up with some good wisdom because I don't want to look like an asshole. You talk to them like you would your friend, your family, you know. Sometimes
Mm,
it might feel a little dinner, but they're there to be that original village that we were denied in modern society. They are there to reflect back to us the ultimate truth that we are, to be a
mm,
symbiotic relationship. There is
mm,
no guilt, shame, or punishment, coming from them. They want to
mm.
pull you out of shame and rip off the clothes of shame and, help you grow your mane of pride.
Lioness mane.
I'm a
Yeah.
Leo and blonde. I gotta go there.
Well, as you were saying that, I was just really feeling how, it was bringing me back to the elements and how when I feel most connected to the ancestors and when I feel the most like that I am one with them or I am like on the same level as them is when I am in nature and I'm doing ritual in nature. And so, like working with my earth shrine or just being, there's a tree near my home, this beautiful old Sitka spruce, who I call grandmother tree, the Kontomblé had me go make regular offerings to her for a year when I first arrived here. And they were calling for offering of moon blood. And in a way, this offering of moon blood to the ancient Sitka spruce was a merging on some level so that this grandmother tree could become a source of spiritual support in the other worlds. Yes, look at the heart.
Yes. And
and
I have too, and I encourage all of my clients to get their own tree as well. It is just because those are the ancestors.
yeah, yes, and it's something that, like, I think, and just the point that I wanted to make about it was that being in relationship to these beings, these sentient beings that are in the world around us, is what sustains us and helps us feel that connection to the ancestors. And so being a steward to the river by your home or being a steward to the great grandmother tree, again, it's not about making yourself smaller than, but it's about becoming one with. And that by meeting them in this physical reality and offering them, the physical element of water or honey or whatever it is, that happening in the other world where a part of your essence, and this is why the moon blood was important because it's DNA, just like saliva to the water, a part of your essence is merging with theirs in the other world. Yeah, and hair. It's merging with them in the other world so that they can become this source of support for you with the space that you hold to help others. Or when you call the ancestors in, it's like every time I do my invocation, I call on that grandmother tree because she's helping to hold that space to bring in the ancestors and the spirits that are going to work with someone in a divination. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring in the elements and talk about how I feel most at home, and I would love to hear you more share about your experiences too.
Well, I
Yeah.
like what you said there with the becoming one with the elements, because it's almost as though we become part of that mycelium network. And so once you merge with that, you can tap into that frequency, that energy at any time, because that's what trees do. They feed each other. They are in constant support and communication. And if one is flailing, they will send help and support. A new tree is born. And just it makes me think that when we make these offerings like that, we do become a part of that mycelium network and a part of that. And just as we were saying before, that's the making of a family. Then you have
Oh.
that constant support. Maybe think about too the beauty about going into nature is that what Riley, Caroline's husband, used to always say to me is that nature doesn't lie. And so, you know, nature will always reflect back to you the beauty that you are, the love that you are, just as a grandmother does when you're feeling tantrumy or clamped, anxious. You know, it's that beautiful, sweet hold because nature doesn't project its own wounds back into you as humans do.
Yes. Yeah, and that's such an important point you're bringing forward, because there's times that I'll be in nature and it doesn't feel good. And it
Yeah.
feels heavy or icky, or there's an incredible amount of grief. And nature
Mm-hmm.
isn't those moments either. And a big, what I've learned to be a big, like, initiatory, I want to say like a big initiatory pull, draw, phase, whatever you want to call it, that into becoming a steward to the land where you live, is allowing yourself to surrender to the grief that still lives in that land. And that's something that I had to do when I came out here, you know, the Oregon coast, and there's so many trees that just get farmed constantly. And it's like there's layers and cycles of moving through that grief. And when I first moved here and I'd go out in the woods, I didn't feel very good, you know, and I had
Mm-hmm.
to allow that ancient cellular memory, the part of me that remembered what this land used to be like from past lives. It had to come up and out and through my body, so that I could remove that layer of separation between me and the trees right in front of me, or in fact, the ancient stump. Like, there was, in particular, when we first moved out here, we were house sitting at a farm about 20 minutes, you know, down the road in the logging areas. And I'd walk back and up the old logging road and went into the woods one day, you know, off trail, and I saw this ancient stump. And it just like, oh, like it just, I could feel all the little people that had lived there. And I started calling them back, you know, like calling them back, singing, you know, making offerings, asking them to come back. And I could see that call that I was doing to them was actually them calling me to see that, step forward, to recognize what had happened, and that this is a part of the waking up that they're asking from many of us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 It makes me think of The Giving Tree too. That book when I was little used to always break my heart. I didn't understand why someone gifted it to me. I was like, is this supposed to be a pleasurable book? Because I just want to go sob when they take everything away. Do you want to answer that question, Aislinn?
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I see the question from Kyle. Thanks, Kyle. About the land and the trees, etc., often call for urine. Not sure if you've felt this. This is really interesting. I haven't felt the call for urine specifically, but I do for DNA, like moon blood, saliva, and the Kontomblé have brought through, in a divination with this wonderful sister of mine and priestess woman. They brought through the importance of the Amrita fluid. So the Amrita
Mm.
fluid, asmic fluid that comes through from the woman, right? The
Mm-hmm.
during lovemaking. And they've talked about in ancient times, the Kontomblé have shown ancient times, women coming together and offering their Amrita fluid to the earth at particular points on the planet to awaken the energy grids that, you know, they're talking about the energy grids and these dragon lines, to awaken the ancient matriarchal lines. And so this is all connecting back to the, you know, part of the call to do this course, the I Call You Home, the Ancestor Course, is we're going to be diving deep into that mending of the ancient matriarchal lineages, and how that is so much more than just working with like a deceased grandfather, where that is important to know how to deal with that and handle that, and we'll be covering that. But it's like, that's like the little, you know, like, no, not to like, no shame on the grandfather, but like, that's like the little like orange cone in the middle of the highway. We just need to know like how you
Yeah.
pick it up side so that we can drive down the highway to like the heart of the forest that has been raised down and like ask it to rise again, you know? And so
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
we're doing. And oh, okay,
That's
yeah, urine fertilizes the plants with minerals and electric. That makes perfect sense, and I totally understand that. And to be honest, I like, you know, peeing in the woods is one of my favorite places.
Amen. My son too.
mm, yeah.
I want
Yes.
I think the perfect opening right now with what you said about the awakening to really talk about what I'm most excited that you're offering about. Well, not most excited. I just was so happy to see this is the offering of being able to make a talisman and the
Yeah.
importance of that when you're doing this kind of work. Because, well, would you want to go into what you define a talisman to be or its purpose and how you've worked with them? Or I could share what I've heard
Yeah.
recently.
I would
Well,
love to say.
well, I really got that what the talisman is almost the tether to for us to stay grounded in our own being as we're awakening and expanding in all of these thoughts. That's what makes you almost a light to all the eyes of adversity. You know,
Mm.
to almost as though, and this is really silly, but I tend to see lots of images in movies, but like in the end of Poltergeist when the woman is going to Carol Ann and they tie a rope around her so they can pull her back out. Going on the other side, that it's just that sort of, because there's so many opportunities for you to waver. It's incredibly difficult to have people who know you as you are now to witness you change and them not liking it. And wanting you to step back into your old skin. And it really just is a grounding into who you are and a tethering. And a phrase that I heard Malidoma say recently was, you know, most people are deciding between being the kings of hell or in service to heaven. And the talisman to me is to hold you steadfast in your service, because the kings of hell will try to convince you that they have it better.
Mm. Wow. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, something was coming in as you were saying that, is that the talisman, like one of its purposes and one of its aspects can be, one of the aspects that it can be imbued with is to be sort of like this device of deflection and just protection. But it's like by having an what is a so-called object actually become imbued with the essence of life and spirit. Like when you create a talisman, it's no longer an object, it's a being. And this
Yes.
being is there like on your behalf to help tether you, as you were saying, help be like a cord of connection to the ancestors. And by having that there as your anchor, again, as you're saying, it's also almost like having like a little spiritual double in the other world, so that when things kind of get sent your way, rather than going straight into your field, it's like there's this other thing there that can kind of take the hit before you do. And that's why it's important when you have a talisman, if it's built for that intention, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't. It depends on what's needed and what medicine is wanting to be brought out, right? And this is where the Kontomblé will come in. And in our time together in the Ancestor Course, they're gonna talk about specific to each of the women that are there, what's specific to them medicine they're wanting to bring out. And so there'll be guidance on what elements to use and what things come to you. But with the thing about the deflection, it's like, if that's the way that they want to go, because as you're saying, maybe you're going through an initiation, and when we go through initiations, often what happens in the modern world is that we come out the other side new and a different person, a different being, and everyone who knew us before that doesn't want to, often they don't acknowledge it or recognize it. And so they want us to be who we were before. And that can pull us back into our old skin or drag us down or have like the voices of doubt come in. So yeah, as you're saying, like one of my first talismans was actually with this purpose. And it was made for me by Caroline, who we've talked about a few times today, who I also met at the Kontomblé merger. You'd done training with her. And so like that, you know, these things, they're there for protection, and they're also there as a being that we continually feed and give life to, and then imbue with purpose. And so there might be a talisman that's more for protection, but there might be one that's more for connecting with the element of the wind. And there might be one that like is for more of a mermaid woman to do her work with the water.
Yeah.
So it's,
and what they're going to is like perhaps the talisman is, you know, you're talking about the tether and I'm talking about the rope around the waist for poltergeist, but really what if the talisman is the tangible representation of the reconnection to the umbilical cord?
yeah, exactly. And it can be so. It absolutely can be so. Just as you can do a ritual that could be the tangible representation of reconnecting. And the other thing about the talisman is that it's a reflection of the interior work that you've done, or the interior transformation you've gone through already through your initiation. It's given physical form, and it's given physical form in a sacred manner, in a sacred way that then lives on your shrine. It lives on your ancestor shrine. It lives on your elemental shrine, to be a reminder to you that you have transformed when you're living in a modern world where other people who've known you for 5 or 10 years aren't recognizing that transformation. And so it becomes a way that you even more step into these changes, right? It's like regalia in a way. What's that?
I not apologize anymore for the transition that you've stepped into.
Right. And we're talking about many different types of talismans. Like there can be a talisman, the more of the protection one, that just stays on the altar, but there can also be something that, like, as a diviner with purpose, that's also has a living spirit.
Oh,
am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. Well, I was just saying that, like, other talismans, you know, they could be something that you wear when you divine, that's also imbued with purpose, but it allows you to be recognized by the ancestors when you meet them in that sacred space of ritual and divination. They can see you as you're like the great glorified higher self being that you are, and it allows you to step out of your own skin and like take off your mask in a way. If say you were to make like a headpiece or a hood, or like a talisman you wear on your neck, right? Yeah. So there's so many things, and it's so fun. And another point that I want to make with it is that it's about putting the power back into our hands. And it's what, like, today you can buy so many things. There's so many people, beautiful craftsmen, who make beautiful talismans, and I'm not trying to discount that, but there's a power when you make it for yourself, especially if you've never done it before. And through the guidance of the Kontomblé, I've made a number of talismans for myself now, and they've just absolutely like powered me up. Like I don't know, if I had bought one, it would be really different than one I made with my own hands. And each piece of that talisman went through a ritual process that then gets fed and becomes a part of the life of the being as a whole.
And that it's a ritual that is in the honoring of you. And we all need as much self-care as we can, but what a beautiful creative opportunity to create something that can reflect back to you and hold the honor that you're beginning to have for yourself.
Yes, so beautiful.
So will you be divining talismans for each individual person who are in your course?
Well,
or will it be a collection?
Yeah, the way that it's unfolding is quite mysterious, as it often is with the Kontomblé.
Yes.
So it's a 2-month course, and we have 5 live calls, and 3 of them are going to be group Kontomblé ceremonies. So there'll be like longer calls. That's going to be the first one with the opening ceremony, the middle one, which is kind of the eye of the needle, making it through that threshold, and then the last one, the closing, will all be with Kontomblé. And then those other 2, we're going to be focusing more on discussion, Q&A about ancestralization, and then also going through an ancestral healing process that is my way of working with individuals and groups to ancestralize. So we'll be doing one call devoted to the paternal lineage, and one where the process is devoted to the maternal. And we'll be going back far as a group, like going back many generations, working with not just one individual relative, but like as many that are able to be, held within that space. And so
Yeah.
the talisman is a part of this, because what's happening in our weeks off is there will be video teachings about, how to create an ancestral feast, about elemental ritual, about the talisman. And it's during the ceremonies that the Kontomblé will likely bring through the messages about the talisman. And I can't say what they're going to say, because I never know what they're going to say. I just know. Yeah, I just know what they've asked to create. So
you're totally like the old 80s or 90s Time Life book commercials where they're like, I was on a plane and I had a pain in my arm, and a sister 5,000 miles away broke her arm. What happened? Read the book. People, you probably don't remember that because you're, but people need to. That's the brilliance of working with you, is that it is so spontaneous. It's never set in the goal in a curriculum of rigidity, and that's the beauty of it, is that it leaves so much room for so many exciting awakenings and teachings for you, I'm sure, as well, as it's all coming in. But just before, I feel like we're almost closing in on an hour. If you could just talk about, for anybody who watches this and isn't really familiar with the Kontomblé, to talk about the type of energy that they're working with, and what it's like to experience them.
Oh, wow. I feel like you might be able to say what it's like to experience them better, but so the Kontomblé, they're the little people of the earth. They come from the Dagara tribe in Burkina Faso, and Elder Malidoma brought these ways and these teachings over to the West. There's many nations of little people from cultures all over the world. There's indigenous nations of little people. There's the leprechauns. There's the manahune in Hawaii, duendes. There's so many different kinds of little people. There's the fae. And so the Kontomblé, I always like to say, they're kind of like speaking on behalf of all these different nations of little people. And a big part of why they do this is because the lineage has maintained an intact tradition of having voice diviners, of having diviners who are particularly merged with them, bring them through in the space of ritual and ceremony and divination. And I believe, like in my bones, I know that if you go far back enough, there were diviners of the little people, voice diviners of the little people in other cultures. And I think you see it emerging with the emergence of light language and the ancient languages coming up as people awaken right now. But because the Kontomblé, they're really this intact lineage, right? Like that umbilical cord was never severed within this lineage, and it was brought here to the West. Because of that, they're often speaking on behalf of many other nations of little people, and I like to say they're like the MCs at the party. And in the voice divination, what's happening is going into that divinatory space. You'll hear my bells and rattles, and traditionally you don't see the diviner, so the screen will be off for that part. But the Kontomblé come through in their ancient language, which is their mother tongue. And it's a language as old as Earth. It's a language as old as the stars. It's a universal language, and it's a gatekeeper language. It's a language that, when it's spoken, a space opens in this world and the other, and a space opens where people in the physical world can make contact with the other world in a new way, and it's happening through that cellular memory that's awakening. So their language is coming through, and then I translate it into English. And often it's silly. Sometimes it's a little to the point. It's a little pointed. And often it rhymes. The ways of the little people, they speak in rhyme and jokes and riddles. And so they'll bring that medicine through in that kind of riddling way, but they'll also get to the point with things, and they'll say things that we need to hear to like these things that they say, they're calls into greater dignity. They're calls for us to step up into our power and stand forward. And often they'll make fun of humans because it's become so, part of the mainstream culture to depress ourselves, to contract ourselves. And so often they're bringing through calls to dignity and to remembering who we truly are.
Yes. Yeah. I remember one of the divinations that I had with Caroline, and I feel like we called you in, but they were like hitting me on the head with a walking stick, like, stop, like drilling through the rigidity of everything and of my brain, my brain. And I just want to say how beautiful it was being in Dano and in Elder Malidoma's village. In Burkina Faso, this is nothing to blink an eye at, and that's why their language is still able to be maintained, and why you are able to do the voice divination, because that is just an accepted part of the world. The other isn't the other. It just is. They don't even have a word for the other world. It's just it's just, well, that's part of this world. It's a beautiful merging where, and I just feel like it is such an incredible thing to experience, because living life, they are constantly dancing with the world of imagination and not taking it as simply dreaming that's not possible. It's the idea that if I can dream it, then it is absolutely possible. That anything that you can imagine has wonderful groundedness to it, and exponential possibilities. And so when you live in that space, you're never living from a place of limitations. You're living from a place of curiosity, constant wonder. And then, you don't grow old as fast because you're always learning, right?
Do you feel like, Amy, since coming into this work and becoming someone who walks with this lineage and carries it, that you felt an increase in your curiosity?
Yes. When I first started studying with Malidoma, I was like, oh, I love working with the elements, and I love all of these rituals and the offerings. But he would talk about the Kontomblé, and I'd be like, I was so closed-minded. I was like, I don't believe in that. And then I saw what I saw, and I was like, let's do this. And that I'm really grateful for coming in like that and having the experience of both worlds, because I completely understand that it does seem crazy, but how limited I was in my what one would call normalcy.
Yeah.
And how many do feel that, and especially as children, and have instincts. And I think so many of us that are even closed-minded do feel the other, do try to connect to loved ones that passed, do try to imagine the possibility of unicorns and just sort of and so I understand the fear in it, because it denies everything that we're told, but also what's the harm in believing in everything, in all the possibilities? We don't know until we know. And so now I'm open to to the possibilities of everything. And
Oh,
that feels so much more exciting to me, to walk with that feeling rather than denying its reality outright.
oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, and that's you make a great point. Like it's not going to harm you. Like this can't hurt you, to be open to the
Right.
possibility. And the thing about the trauma is that the trauma will lie, and that like the trauma of colonization will lie, and it will tell us that it can hurt us, right?
Yeah.
Because so many of our ancestors, so many of the women in particular, were hurt for this. They were hurt because of their connection to the other world. They were hurt because they spoke to spirit. And so the trauma will tell us we can be hurt. So it's important for us to continually like calm the nervous system, expand, and remind ourselves that this actually, being open to this actually can't hurt us right now. We're living in a different time where actually the other world is saying like, hey, we're ready, let's do this.
And truly discern what it is that's going to hurt you. Because all of those women that were not hurt by spirit. They were
Yeah,
hurt by the people that didn't want to believe them or didn't want them to be that sovereign or that
exactly.
excitable, or that hopeful. One is so easy to control, and fear and small and everything that we talked about in the beginning. And so whenever that fear comes up, to truly discern, what is it that you're afraid of? Are you afraid of the actual healing that you can experience through curiosity and wonder and connection to hope in the divine? Or are you going to be hurt by the people that are judging you for it? Because if
Right.
they're judging, really just hurting themselves.
Right. And if they're judging you, you're allowing yourself to be hurt by caring, and
Right.
that's the hard things is it's like we have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and continually wade through like these bogs of fear on the journey toward making contact with our medicine. And that's something that I think you and I really have in common with our path, was that we had to withstand so much like mental illness and psychic invasion in order to make it back on the journey home to ourselves, which we're both still on. It's still a journey. It's still a process. We still support each
Always.
other. We're human. But like
Yeah.
how far we have come, right? How far we have come, and how possible this is for you all, for everyone, right? No matter where you
Yeah.
are, where you will go is going to continue to be so much farther than what you can imagine now. And that's one of the messages that spirit keeps bringing in, is that like the visions that they have for us are so expansive that we can't even see where it's going. We just need to continue to like pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, walk through the bog, and like surrender to that like rising sun that's coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I want
So,
to add on that, in dealing with all of the things that you and I have both gone through, if I had constantly denied what Malidoma was teaching me, or what was actually calling my spirit home, I would still be in so much pain, because when one is never able to heal in rigidity or in shame, or denial of the other. And so it really is scary, but you don't want to go on a roller coaster that doesn't make your stomach drop a little bit. So much joy and healing in that, and mending that, that is worth the risk of a side eye.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so. Aw. Well, I'm wondering if there's anything particular you want to do in closing, if there's a last story you want to share, or maybe there's a question from the people who are with us now. I'm open to receiving any questions if any of you have one, and or if there's like a story or a particular thing that wants to be honored. I'm open.
Yeah.
I could share a little
I
bit
feel
more.
If I invite you to keep sharing. There's
Yeah.
any last thing you want to say about your course? I'm going to say again that the healing that I gained from working with the Kontomblé and the elements and ancestralization has been exponential. And you know, what is so beautiful about it is that it's not something where it's like you're given a prescription and then it's over. Like, oh, you had a sickness, and so we're going to give you this protocol and now it's done. And then you just go about your way. Stepping into this work, it's just ever expanding, and you're always healing and growing and learning. I just want to say, you know, the main thing that comes through so much for me is the importance of us to stay youthful, because as we grow older, we're told like, no, you got to be practical and you got to think logically. And, you know, yes, of course, in many situations, that's absolutely necessary, but it's the absence of play that death comes in. And so, you know, really working with this work, you're not only stepping into the realm um, of healing, but it's the realm of creativity. And as I said before, curiosity and wonder. And you never, ever, ever stop learning, and you never stop playing. And that's the excitement of it. That's what living truly is for me, instead of waiting.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So beautiful. Yeah. And it's about like when you're talking about, it's not just a protocol, it's not just a pill you're given. It's an invitation to be in relationship. And once that relationship
Yeah.
is made, it's in your life forever. You're making family. You're making
Yes.
family. So if your ritual prescription is to go like make an offering to the river, you've now begun this relationship with this river that's going to be there, and it's going to be sustained, just as any friendship. Like any friendship could die if you don't feed it. Same with
Mm-hmm.
the river, or same with the tree. And so that's what these beings, by being in relationship to them, they call us into our space of curiosity, and they call us into our creativity and into our play, because we've got to open ourselves up to listening to them and what it is they're asking for from us, just as a friend might ask for us for support in a certain way. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so beautiful.
And that's what I'm going forward with that idea of the poem I posted recently of the quiet rebels. Think about the potential and the possibilities of the healing of the earth and the collective if we just quietly sent our love to these elements, to these beings, to our ancestors, and to our alive relatives or friends or enemies that are still in pain. You can still reach them through this work by just offering sweetness of honey or wholeness of milk or coffee for awakening, you know, that they
Yeah.
are just quiet modalities of healing, almost to me like making a quiet donation to a quiet investment in a restaurant, or a quiet donation to a nonprofit. You know, that's what
Mm-hmm.
this is, our collective acts of service to healing those loved around us, those on the other side, and all of those little beings that are living within us.
Yeah, yes. And yeah, thank you for saying that, because again, we're looping back to something we were saying in the beginning about the simplicity, and to recognize that working with your ancestors, if you just want to get started with that and begin, it can be as simple as making an offering, setting a space, and just having the intention to bring healing. Like having intention to make connection with those well ancestors and bring healing down the line. That can be enough to actually start moving something. And it may not be like, bam, you have results right away, but it's tending to that relationship over time, that like, just like as small, quiet donations over time might help support a foundation's, you know, budget for a year or whatever. Like, you know, small rituals with that consistent application of that intention, you know, after a year, you're really going to see a shift. And if you feel like you're ready to dive in even deeper and take it to that next level and like go beyond just that simple intention, which is still very effective and potent, but you want to go into the depths of like what maybe your particular unique like expression of your ancestral medicine is, and how to birth it in the world, and how to birth it in a world that can be of service to your community and many others that you're here to help. Then that's what we're going to be doing in the Ancestor Course, that I call you home, the Ancestor Course. And we're starting in a week. It's going to be beautiful. We have a beautiful group coming together. Enrollment is open. If you're interested and you're watching us, you're watching this, you've made it this far and you're with us and you have any questions, you can send me a.
You froze again. You can send her a DM.
Yeah, you can message me, hearts. And you can let me know, where you're at in your process, because I think it's really, this is a big call. And the Kontomblé, in talking about it, I shared a little bit about it in the post I did yesterday, but I'm talking about this course as a space of initiation. And they're talking about the Ancestral Mountain, this mountain in the other world where the ancestors reside. It's calling these women forward to receive this next step into their medicine. Yeah. You want to share?
Another beautiful synchronicity is that when Aislinn and I were talking about doing this live, I went to Malidoma's book of Water and Spirit and said, okay, I'm going to flip to a page and show me the quote you want to put up there. And it was a quote around him being his final initiation, being thrown into this mountain to remember and to talk about the elements. What the element of mineral is, which is the mountain, is that idea of remembering, of going into the library of your being and learning how to interpret those etchings on your bones, those vibrations that you're feeling in the crystalline layers of your being, and speaking them into being. So that, I just want to say again, working with this to dive into something as what you're offering is such an incredible invitation to really stepping in to your sovereignty and your purpose, and being able to make that final choice to be of service to the higher unfoldment.
So beautiful.
Starts with yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Amy. This has been so beautiful to connect and share. And I could sing a song in closing. I feel like there's a song. Okay. Yeah. There's a song that's been stuck in my head all morning. And I think that they want me to sing it. And I've never sang it for anyone before, but it came to me about a year ago when I was doing an ancestralization for my own ancestors. Yes. And I made a big feast, and I just like had a party, and it was just me and the ancestors, and I had my drum, and this song came through. And it's for the women, and the lyrics might shift a little because it's always changing, so I'm going to do my best to keep with it. So I have my drum here. So all right, let's see. Sisters, I want you to know you deserve to go where your heart is calling you. Oh, sisters, I want you to know you deserve to flow like the river to the sea. Oh, sisters, I want you to know you deserve to sisters, I want you to know you deserve to go where your heart is calling you. Woo!
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I just want to say on top of that, it just reminds me of a long time ago, one of the divinations that you did for me with the Kontomblé about talking about the importance of growing my roots into the earth, so that you can garner that strength to be unwavering when facing the storms of adversity. And that I just think is the most important thing. You know, that we're never going to get to a point where there aren't obstacles, where there isn't self-doubt, where there isn't any more anxiety. It's about grounding ourselves enough to know that we are rooted enough to survive it and to truly thrive through it and come out on the other end with even greater wisdom and greater strength.
Yes.
So thank you so
Help
much.
grow my roots.
Yes. So go grow your roots with Aislinn and jump into the mountain and dive into the rivers and get your hands dirty with the trees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Soil. And really, that we haven't even mentioned yet is that the ancestral realm is represented in the Dagara tribe by the element of fire. And the fire is the element of ultimate transformation. And so when you step into the realm of your ancestors, you are walking through the fire into the other world and into the authentic you, you know?
Yeah, putting that fire in your belly, merging it with the fire in your heart, bringing it through the fire of your voice, and just like lighting lighting the world up.
You.
Aw. Well, how do you
Okay.
feel about maybe I could do a little closing of the space? Does that feel good? Since
Yes.
you did it? All right, it'll just be a little one. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you to everyone in the future who will join us. Thank you to all of the healthy and supportive ancestors who came forward today and danced and wove with us and journeyed with us. I honor and acknowledge each and every one of you for the absolute love you are and have always been for me and for Amy and for everyone who has participated today. All of the tall ones and small ones and winged ones too, and the little people. Thank you. I maintain this sweet connection with you all and close the space for today. So it is.
So it is. Ashe.
Ashe, namaste, natakiase. Thank you. Yes, and if you feel called, if you didn't make an offering, if you want to, in closing, make an offering to your ancestors or an offering of honey to the Kontomblé, just as Sasha Louise is saying here, love and honey to us both and the Kontomblé ancestors. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Until we meet again.
Yeah. Until we meet again.
Mwah.